as we do these previews, everything I say that there is a conviction behind it, right? Like, oh yes, these are going to be the five, or these are the five most talented teams in the league. These are the coaches that could get fired this year. These are the players that have the most pressure on them. All these different things. And that is what we're supposed to do in sports talk, right? Is we are supposed to have our takes and stick with them, and the hotter the better, and all of those sorts of things. But I'm human enough to admit, sometimes there's some shit I'm worried I'm wrong about. And so today, as we kind of reach the halfway point of the NBA previews here, going to be looking at what I'm worried I'm wrong about this year with the NBA. So number 5, I am worried that I might be wrong on how everything fits with the Dallas Mavericks. We had this conversation a little bit about Toxic was in on the chat asking about like how do we think Clay fits on this Dallas Mavericks team, and I think it fits really well. I think you have a full year with Gafford in Washington coming back from that trade. And I think you have Clay, who now is going into a role where he is not going to have to be the be-all, end-all superstar of this and be just be corner 3 guy over there. Just do that. And we will be more than happy. And then you have Luka with off of this championship run, close to a championship, hopefully motivated and all of that. I feel like these pieces fit so well together. But we have been fooled by that before with some of these teams, and with some veterans. Like there is a world where like Luka was just kind of beaten down by that long of a run and having to carry things, and maybe it isn't quite as good, and the supporting staff doesn't help out as much as maybe we think, and the fact that this team doesn't defend at all really comes back to bite them, and Clay is just cooked. Like some of these things could happen, and all of a sudden my good feelings about Dallas could just go away, and so that's why I'm a little worried I'm wrong about them, but I'm at number 5 because I'm not super worried about that. And number 4, I'm a little worried I might be wrong about Atlanta just being bad. It wasn't a fit with Murray. So Trae Young now has the team back to himself. And I have great concerns about that. I have great concerns about the rest of the roster. And I do not think that this is a good basketball team. And so I will be able to, plausible deniability, the whole year, I'll be able to explain it away, much like Walt was with the Commanders earlier. It's like, yeah, who are they beating? Because the Eastern Conference in the NBA is in a downswing right now. There's obviously some talented teams at the top, but it gets ugly quick. And so there are, I think, a number of wins out there for Atlanta to steal. And so we may not even get a good sense of if this is a good basketball team or not, based off of the lack of competition that there could be in the East. And so I am worried that the results are going to be there, even if the team is bad. Also, like, there's a chance that maybe now Young matures coming off of this experience with Murray and grows into a better basketball player. Or with no Murray there, there's other opportunities for some of these players to rise up and take full advantage, or something. Either way, I am a little bit worried that I think Atlanta may be better than I think they are. But again, that's at 4. At 3, the Rockets' young players development, and that is going to be a theme for a couple of these next ones here, is that one of the lessons we took from last year is that some of these kids coming into this league now are so good that when it hits, it really hits. And so instead of bad lottery team gets good player helps bad lottery team, but only a little bit. And now, they've gone from 22 wins now to 30. And now they've gone up to 39. And now they're a bit above 500 and they're a 7 seed. And now they're competing for an NBA championship. Minnesota skipped a couple of those steps with Ant, right? SGA helped Oklahoma City skip a couple of those steps. And so I am now thinking that the Rockets players can help these guys step, because there's like 3 or 4 of them on that team that you think might be able to take those steps. But that is entirely projection based, right? Like the first 2 in the worried I'm wrong about, Dallas, I'm worried that they might not still be a good team. Well, last time we saw them, they were a good team. Atlanta, I'm worried that I might be wrong that I think they're bad. Well, last time we saw them, they were a bad team. This one, we are now projecting into how these young athletes adapt to life in the NBA and how does it fit with Fred VanVleet and with Udoka as the coach and all of that. So I'm a little worried that I might be going a bit ahead of myself on the Rockets. Number 2, the Bridges and now Towns fit on the Knicks. Admittedly, when I prepped this, that was not the Towns part of this was not an option. He could not fit well on this team because he wasn't on this team. But now I still look at this as a really well-built roster and a team that just kind of fits perfectly together. And so I am worried that I am wrong on that you have Towns who came from being the guy in Minnesota and now potentially being the third guy on the Knicks with a coach who he didn't really mesh with the first time, and a team that isn't going to give him the ball a ton. You go with Bridges from a situation with the Nets where who else was going to get the ball and score? So he was able to do all of these great things. And then you have Brunson, who is actually the guy there and is someone who has stepped up in gigantic ways. I think all of it will fit, but there is a long track record of A, this not working, and B, it not working in New York, where every time we think, okay, well, yeah, it's Amari and Melo. How can they go wrong? Oh, that's how they can go wrong. I see it now. But it does feel like this team is built really well. I do worry that it's going to take too long to mix, or it's just not going to mix at all, and things could fall off. So that's one thing I'm worried about. But the number one thing I am worried about this year is my assumption that Wemby moves into MVP caliber territory already, and thusly carries the Spurs into the postseason. They are the number one team I am focused on for making a big jump this year, and it is entirely based off of that very large Frenchman that is on their team. And they went out and acquired Chris Paul. I think they've done a lot of really, really smart moves to build around this kid. It is not perfect yet, though. And so that is where my concern comes in, is that I just think Wemby's going to be amazing. And like, A, he can get hurt. We had 1 year where he didn't, so now we're assuming that he's never going to. And that absolutely could happen, and it would suck. But he could get hurt, and it would be very devastating for this team. Or even if he takes a gigantic step, he still isn't enough to carry what is, aside from like Chris Paul and a couple of other guys, a fairly flawed roster. So I am worried that I am maybe wildly overestimating what could happen with the San Antonio Spurs this year.